A moment of truth. Olivia Bennet sat on the edge of her bathtub, staring at the two pink lines that had appeared on the pregnancy test. She counted backward in her head, 6 weeks pregnant. A smile spread across her face as she imagined telling James, her fiancé of 2 years and partner of 5. Their wedding was just 3 weeks away, and this news felt like the universe's blessing on their union. She wrapped the test in tissue and tucked it into her pocket, already planning how she'd tell him tonight. Maybe she'd order his favorite takeout and hide the test in a small gift box. Or perhaps she'd simply whisper it to him when they were curled up on the couch, watching their Friday night movie. However she chose to share it, she knew James would be thrilled. He'd always talked about wanting children, ideally 2, though Olivia had lobbied for 3. The apartment was quiet when she returned from the bathroom. James had texted earlier that he was working late again, the 3rd time this week. As a financial analyst at Henderson & Brooks, he'd been putting in extra hours preparing for a major client presentation. Olivia didn't mind. Her work as a children's book illustrator kept her busy enough, and she understood the demands of his career. She settled at her drafting table, losing herself in the watercolor woodland creatures she was creating for her latest project. The hours slipped by, and when she next checked the time, it was nearly 9 p.m. She stretched, realizing James should be home soon. On impulse, she decided to surprise him at his office. They could grab a late dinner at that Italian place he loved, and she could share her news over tiramisu and decaf coffee. The Henderson & Brooks building was mostly dark when Olivia arrived, but she knew the code to the after-hours entrance. James had given it to her months ago for situations exactly like this. The elevator carried her to the 14th floor, and she stepped out into the dimly lit hallway. As she approached James's office, she heard voices, his and a woman's. Olivia paused, not wanting to interrupt if he was in a meeting, though the hour seemed strange for client work. The door was slightly ajar, and through the crack, she could see James sitting on his desk, his back to her. A woman stood close to him, her hand resting on his chest. "You know I can't keep doing this, Veronica," James was saying, his voice strained. "The wedding is in 3 weeks." The woman, Veronica, leaned closer. "You've been saying that for months, Jamie, but you haven't ended things with me, have you? If you really wanted to stop, you would have by now." "It's complicated," James sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "I care about you, but Olivia and I have history. We've built a life together." "A life built on what? Comfort? Routine?" Veronica challenged. "Tell me you feel with her what you feel with me." The silence that followed was deafening. Olivia's hand flew to her mouth to stifle a gasp. Her other hand instinctively covered her still flat abdomen, as if to protect the tiny life inside from hearing these words. The pregnancy test in her pocket felt suddenly heavy, like a stone. When James finally spoke, his words cut through her like glass. "I don't know what I feel anymore, but I need more time." Veronica laughed bitterly. "Time. Always more time." "Well, your time is running out, James. Make your choice." Unable to bear another word, Olivia backed away silently, tears blurring her vision. She made it to the elevator before the first sob escaped her lips. By the time she reached her car, her body was shaking with grief and shock. The joy of her discovery earlier that day transformed into something unrecognizable, a cruel reminder of how quickly happiness could fracture into despair. As she drove home through the rain that had begun to fall, Olivia wondered how she could possibly face James tonight, knowing what she now knew, carrying not just their child, but the weight of his betrayal inside her. Shattered reflections. The rain continued into the night, matching Olivia's stormy emotions as she paced their apartment. She had turned off all lights except for a small lamp in the corner, casting long shadows across the living room. The pregnancy test lay on the coffee table, a reminder of what should have been the happiest news of her life. When she heard James's key in the door, Olivia froze, suddenly unsure what to say or how to confront him. Should she unleash her anger? Break down in tears? Or pretend she knew nothing at all? "Liv, why are you sitting in the dark?" James called out, flicking on the hallway light. He appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened, hair slightly damp from the rain. He looked exactly like the man she had fallen in love with 5 years ago at her best friend's birthday party. The same warm brown eyes, the same dimple in his left cheek when he smiled. How could someone so familiar suddenly feel like a stranger? "I went to your office tonight," Olivia said quietly. "I wanted to surprise you." James's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a tightening around his eyes, a slight pallor beneath his tan. "Oh, I was in meetings all evening. Must have just missed you." The lie slipped so easily from his lips that Olivia wondered how many others he had told her. "Don't," she whispered. "I saw you with her." "With Veronica!" The silence between them stretched like a vast ocean. James set down his briefcase and sank into the armchair across from her, his shoulders slumping. "How long?" Olivia asked. 4 months, he admitted, staring at his hands. "It started at the company retreat. I never meant for it to happen, Liv, I swear." "But you didn't stop it either," she said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside her. "You let it continue, all while planning our wedding. All while sleeping beside me every night." James looked up, his eyes pleading. "I was going to end it. I just needed more time," Olivia finished for him. "I heard that part too." She stood suddenly, unable to remain still with the energy of betrayal coursing through her veins. "I need some space. I'm going to stay at Deanna's for a few days." "Olivia, please." James reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Can't we talk about this? Work through it?" She looked at him. This man she had trusted with her heart, her future, and now, unknowingly, with the life of their child. "I don't even know who you are right now, James, and I need to figure out if I still know who I am." Without waiting for his response, Olivia grabbed her pre-packed overnight bag from the bedroom. She had packed it while waiting for him, knowing she couldn't spend the night under the same roof, and headed for the door. "What's this?" James asked, noticing the pregnancy test on the table for the first time. Olivia paused, her hand on the doorknob. "Something else you'll need to think about while you're deciding what you want." As she drove to Deanna's apartment across town, Olivia's tears finally came, streaming down her face as the reality of her situation crashed over her. Her wedding was 3 weeks away. She was carrying a child. And the man she had built her life around had betrayed her in the most fundamental way. At Deanna's, Olivia collapsed into her friend's arms, sharing the whole painful story through broken sobs. Deanna listened without judgment, offering tissues and eventually a cup of hot tea laced with honey. "What are you going to do?" Deanna asked gently after Olivia had fallen quiet. Olivia stared into her mug, watching the steam rise and disappear. "I don't know. Part of me wants to cancel everything, the wedding, the future we planned. But this baby changes things." She placed her hand on her stomach. "I always thought James would be an amazing father. Now I wonder if I ever really knew him at all." Meanwhile, back at their apartment, James sat in the dark, the pregnancy test still in his hand. The reality of what he had done, and what he stood to lose, finally began to sink in. He thought of Veronica, the excitement and danger of their affair, how it had made him feel alive in a way that had been missing from his life. But he also thought of Olivia, of the life they had built together, and now of the child they had created. As the night deepened around him, James faced a truth he had been avoiding for months. The time for indecision was over. The question was whether it was already too late to save what mattered most. Confrontations and confessions, 3 days of silence stretched between Olivia and James like an unbridgeable chasm. Olivia had called in sick to work, spending her days curled on Deanna's couch, alternating between fits of anger and waves of crushing sadness. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from James, apologies, pleas to talk, promises to explain, but she couldn't bring herself to respond. On the 4th morning, Olivia woke with a new clarity. The baby deserved better than this limbo, and so did she. It was time to face James, not to reconcile, but to understand. She texted him a time and place, neutral ground, a quiet corner table at Riverside Park Cafe, where they would have privacy without the emotional weight of their shared apartment. James was already waiting when she arrived, looking haggard with dark circles under his eyes and stubble shadowing his usually clean-shaven jaw. He stood when he saw her, uncertainty written across his face. "Thank you for coming," he said as she sat down across from him, maintaining a careful distance. "I'm not here for reconciliation," Olivia stated clearly, her hand instinctively moving to her stomach. "I'm here because I need to understand why and because this baby deserves to know its father, regardless of what happens between us." James nodded, his eyes lingering on her protective gesture. "How are you feeling?" "The pregnancy, I mean." "Morning sickness, tired, emotional, though that last part isn't entirely because of the hormones," she replied with a bitter smile. "But I didn't come to discuss my symptoms, James. I came to hear the truth. All of it." James took a deep breath, his hands clasped tightly on the table. "It started 4 months ago, like I said. The company retreat in Colorado. Veronica had just transferred from the London office. We were assigned to the same team-building activities, spent a lot of time together." He paused. "Nothing happened there physically, but something changed for me. When we got back, I found myself looking for reasons to work with her." "What changed?" Olivia asked, forcing herself to stay calm, to listen rather than react. "I felt—" James struggled for words. "Scared, I think. Of the wedding, of forever. My parents' marriage was a disaster, you know that. My father cheated constantly. My mother stayed miserable for 40 years because of commitment. I started panicking about becoming him, about trapping you in something that would eventually make you hate me. So your solution was to cheat before we even got married?" Olivia's voice rose slightly, drawing a quick glance from a nearby patron. James winced. "I know it makes no sense. I think part of me was self-sabotaging, creating a problem that would either end things or force us to confront issues I was too afraid to bring up directly." "What issues, James?" "We talked about everything, or at least I thought we did. My fears about marriage. The pressure from my family to follow the traditional path. Finance career, suitable wife, children, house in the suburbs. I've been trying so hard to be what everyone expects that I lost sight of what I actually want." "And what do you want?" Olivia asked, bracing herself for his answer. "You," he said without hesitation. "Our life together, this baby. I ended things with Veronica the night you left. Completely. But I'm not going to pretend one conversation fixes what I broke." He reached across the table, not touching her but leaving his hand palm up in invitation. "I'm starting therapy next week. To work through my family issues, my commitment fears. I'm not asking you to forgive me or take me back. I'm just asking for a chance to become someone worthy of your trust again. Someone worthy of being a father to our child." Olivia studied his face, searching for any sign of the smooth, easy lies he had told before. Instead, she saw raw vulnerability and genuine remorse. "I'm angry, James, so angry I can barely breathe sometimes, and hurt in ways I never imagined possible. I don't know if I can ever trust you again." "I understand," he said quietly. "I'll respect whatever you decide." "I haven't decided anything yet," Olivia admitted. "I need more time. And space. And honesty, complete honesty from now on, no matter how difficult." As they parted ways outside the cafe, Olivia felt the first stirrings of something other than pain. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. The path ahead was unclear, but for the first time in days, she could imagine a future beyond the betrayal. Whether that future included James as more than a co-parent remained to be seen. Part 4. The space between 2 weeks passed. The wedding date loomed on the calendar, a reminder of what should have been. Olivia had moved back to their apartment, while James stayed with his brother, Gregory. The separation gave them both room to breathe, to think, to begin the process of healing independently before deciding if healing together was possible. Olivia sat in Dr. Patricia Whitman's office, her hands folded over her now slightly rounded belly. At 10 weeks pregnant, her body was beginning to change, even if it wasn't obvious to anyone else yet. "How are you feeling about James's revelations?" Dr. Whitman asked, her kind eyes studying Olivia's expression. "Conflicted," Olivia admitted. "Part of me understands his fears better now. His father's infidelity destroyed his family. James grew up watching his mother wither away in a loveless marriage. I knew this affected him, but I never realized how deeply he feared becoming his father. Understanding doesn't necessitate forgiveness, Dr. Whitman reminded her. You're allowed to comprehend his motivations while still holding him accountable for his choices. Olivia nodded. The hardest part is that I still love him. Despite everything, when I imagine my future, he's in it. Is that weakness? Am I setting myself up for more heartbreak? It's not weakness to love someone despite their flaws, the therapist replied. The question is whether you can rebuild trust, and whether James is genuinely committed to change. Meanwhile, across town, James sat in his own therapist's office, confronting decades of family patterns and unexamined fears. I used Veronica as an escape, James admitted to Dr. Marcus Tran. Instead of talking to Olivia about my fears, I created a situation that would either destroy us or force us to address the problems. That's a common pattern, Dr. Tran observed. Self-sabotage as a form of communication. But there are healthier ways to express your needs and fears. Have you thought about what you want your relationship with Olivia to look like going forward, assuming she's willing to try again? James considered the question carefully. I want honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. I want to break the cycle my parents created. I want to be a father my child can respect and a partner Olivia can trust. He paused. I don't want the facade of perfection anymore. I want something real, even with all its messiness and challenges. That evening, Olivia met with Deanna and their mutual friend, Marcus, for dinner. She had been avoiding social gatherings, but tonight she needed the perspective of people who knew both her and James. He's been seeing a therapist twice a week, Marcus told her, having spoken with James recently. Greg says he's barely recognizable, talking about feelings, confronting his family stuff. It's like someone replaced him with an emotionally aware pod person. Deanna rolled her eyes at Marcus's description but squeezed Olivia's hand. The question isn't whether he's changing, Liv. It's whether you can forgive him, and if that's even what you want. Olivia pushed her food around her plate. How do I know if forgiveness is the right choice? How do I know he won't hurt me again? You don't, Deanna said gently. That's the risk of any relationship. But you also know James better than anyone. You need to trust your instincts. Later that night, Olivia sat on her balcony, watching the city lights flicker against the darkness. Her phone buzzed with a text from James. Thinking of you. No response needed. Just wanted you to know. She found herself smiling slightly at his restraint. The old James would have bombarded her with messages demanding resolution, uncomfortable with emotional uncertainty. This new respect for her boundaries was different, perhaps a small sign of the changes he claimed to be making. With one hand on her growing bump, Olivia gazed at the stars and whispered a question to the universe. What would forgiveness look like? The answer didn't come in a flash of insight, but in the quiet acknowledgement that while she couldn't predict the future, she could choose how to face it, with fear or with courage, with bitterness or with hope. The betrayal would always be part of their story, but perhaps it didn't have to be the end of it. Rebuilding from ashes, the day that should have been their wedding dawned clear and bright, a cruelly perfect spring day. Olivia woke early, her hand automatically reaching for the empty space beside her. 3 weeks had passed since their confrontation at the cafe, 3 weeks of separate therapy sessions, cautious text messages, and occasional meetings to discuss practical matters related to the pregnancy. Today, however, felt different. The significance of the date hung in the air, impossible to ignore. Olivia had given herself permission to grieve, to acknowledge the loss of what should have been, even as she remained uncertain about what might still be. Her phone chimed with a text from James. I know what today is. I'm thinking of you. If you want company or space or anything at all, just let me know. Olivia stared at the message, appreciating its simplicity, its lack of pressure or expectation. After a moment's hesitation, she replied, Meet me at Crescent Point at sunset? Just to talk. Crescent Point was a small overlook in the city park where James had proposed. It seemed fitting to meet there today, to face the ghosts of their past plans while deciding on their future. As the sun began its descent, casting long golden rays across the park, Olivia spotted James waiting on the bench. a small bouquet of wildflowers in his hand. Not roses or lilies that would have adorned their wedding, but simple daisies and black-eyed Susans, her everyday favorites. "These aren't a grand gesture," he said as she approached, offering her the flowers. "Just a reminder that I see you, the real you, not just the milestone moments." Olivia accepted them with a small smile. "Thank you. They're perfect." They sat side by side, watching the horizon slowly transform from blue to pink to orange. The silence between them was comfortable now, no longer fraught with unspoken accusations and defenses. "I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness," Olivia finally said. "Not just forgiving you, but what it means to truly forgive someone." James turned to face her, giving her his full attention. "I think forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened," she continued. "It's about choosing not to let it define our future. It's saying that what you did was wrong, it hurt me deeply, and our relationship will never be the same. But that doesn't mean we can't build something new, something perhaps even stronger because we've seen the worst of each other and decided to stay anyway." "Is that what you want?" James asked softly. "To build something new with me?" Olivia placed her hand over her growing bump. "This baby deserves parents who are either wholly committed to each other or wholly at peace with being apart. No half measures, no lingering resentment." "I agree completely," James said. "I've learned so much these past weeks. About myself, about what led me to betray your trust. I can promise you that I'm doing the work to ensure it never happens again. But I know promises aren't enough anymore. I need to show you day by day." Olivia took a deep breath. "I'm willing to try, James. Not to go back to what we were, but to move forward into something more honest, more real. It won't be easy. There will be days when I remember and it hurts all over again. Days when trust feels impossible." "I know," he acknowledged. "And on those days, I'll be there, proving myself again and again for as long as it takes. No shortcuts, no expecting you to just get over it. Real healing takes time." As the last rays of sunlight disappeared below the horizon, Olivia reached for James's hand. It wasn't a grand romantic gesture or a declaration that all was forgiven. It was smaller, more tentative, but perhaps more meaningful for its honesty. "We'll need new wedding plans," she said quietly. "Something smaller, more intimate. After the baby comes, when we're ready." James squeezed her hand gently. "Whatever you want. I'm not going anywhere." They sat together as stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Two imperfect people making the choice to face their future together, with all its uncertainty and possibility. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed them had also forced them to confront the cracks in their foundation, allowing them to rebuild something stronger, more resilient. As they walked back through the park, Olivia reflected that love wasn't the fairy tale she had once believed in. It wasn't perfect or easy or guaranteed. Real love was a choice made daily, through disappointment and joy, through mistakes and forgiveness. It was messy and complicated and sometimes heartbreaking, but in its authenticity, it was also beautiful. Their story wouldn't be one of flawless romance, but of human frailty and courage, of falling and rising again. And perhaps, Olivia thought as she felt the gentle flutter of new life within her, that was a far better story to pass on to their child. Not one of idealized perfection, but of genuine resilience and hard-won hope.